Good evening, everyone. Welcome back, future lawyers, to day 20 of a bar review. We are now exactly 169 days away from the bar examinations. Today, we dive into the very heart of Roman numeral 2, subject matter jurisdiction. Specifically, we will classify the kinds of a subject matter jurisdiction, beginning with a crucial distinction between original and appellate jurisdiction. Our guiding verse for today is Ecclesiastes chapter 7 verse 8. The end of a matter is better than its beginning. In litigation, a case must have a proper beginning. This is original jurisdiction. And if a party seeks to challenge the result, it reaches its end through a proper review. This is appellate jurisdiction. Understanding which court handles the beginning and which court handles the end is absolutely vital. But before we tackle this classification, let us resolve the bar questions I left you with back in day 17 regarding venue and motu proprio dismissal. Here is the question we left hanging in day 17. Peter filed a collection suit in Manila, which was clearly the wrong venue since neither party resides there. David filed an answer but only raised prescription, forgetting to object the venue. The judge took it upon himself to dismiss the case motu proprio for improper venue. Was the judge correct? Let us reveal the suggested answer using our beer method. If your answer looks like this, give yourself full points. First, the binary. No, the motu proprio dismissal is not correct. Second, the enabling law. Jurisprudence provides that a court cannot motu proprio dismiss an ordinary civil case for improper venue, as it is an affirmative defense that strictly belongs to the defendant. Third, the evaluation. Here, there was an improper venue when Peter filed the collection case against David before the RTC of Manila, but neither of them resides therein. David did not raise it as an affirmative defense, but the RTC judge motu proprio dismissed the case on the ground of improper venue. And finally, the resolution. Thus, the motu proprio dismissal by the RTC judge is not correct. Notice how flawlessly this evaluation waives the facts of Peter and David's residences to show exactly why the judge's action was legally infirm. Now, let us proceed to today's main topic. To properly digest the kinds of subject matter jurisdiction, we will use our four-level analytical framework, the Beer syllabus. First, the big picture, recalling what subject matter jurisdiction entails. Second, the essential pillar, where we explicitly define and distinguish original versus appellate jurisdiction. Third, the elemental principle, where we explore the strict exclusivity between these two powers. And fourth, the root level, looking at a landmark Supreme Court ruling that prevents lawyers from blurring these lines. For our big picture, we revisit the core of subject matter jurisdiction. It is the power to hear and determine the general class of cases to which a proceeding belongs. Remember, it is conferred only by constitution or by statute. To ensure an orderly administration of justice, the law classifies the substantive power into different kinds based on the stage of litigation. Today, we focus on the first major classification, original versus appellate jurisdiction. Moving down to our essential pillar, what exactly is original jurisdiction? Look at the image on your screen. Original jurisdiction is the fertile ground where a case is planted. It is the power of the court to take judicial cognizance of a case instituted for judicial action for the very first time. When a plaintiff drafts a complaint and files it to start a lawsuit, they must file it in a court vested by law with original jurisdiction over that specific subject matter. It is the authority to plant the seed, to hear the dispute from its absolute inception, to receive evidence, and to conduct the initial trial. On the other hand, what is appellate jurisdiction? Look at the second image to contrast with the first. Appellate jurisdiction is not planting a new seed. It is putting a magnifying glass over a fully grown tree. It is the authority of a higher rank court to re-examine the final order or judgment of a lower court that already tried the case. A court exercising appellate jurisdiction is not trying the case for the first time. It is not generally receiving new evidence. Its power is specifically limited to reviewing the branches of the completed case to determine if the lower court made a mistake in fact or in law when it originally exercised its jurisdiction. Now we reach to the elemental principle, which is a highly testable fact in bar exams, the principle of exclusivity. Look at the powerful new visual on your screen. The massive impenetrable bedrock wall completely isolates the Golden River of original jurisdiction from Silver River of appellate jurisdiction. Notice how they run parallel but never intersect or mix. This emphasizes the absolute exclusivity of these two powers. The golden rule is this: one does not flow from, nor is it inferred from, the other. Just because a higher court has the supreme power to review a certain type of case on appeal does not mean it has the inherent power to hear that case in the first instance. If the law says the Court of Appeals only has appellate jurisdiction over a specific dispute, you cannot file your original complaint there, no matter how urgent it is. Continuing our elemental principle, how does this apply to our actual courts? Look at the judge holding two distinct gavels. Some courts, like the regional trial court, are uniquely vested by law with both original and appellate jurisdiction, but over different matters. The RTC has original jurisdiction over big civil cases like those incapable of pecuniary estimation, but it also acts as an appellate court reviewing the decisions of the MTCs below it. You must know exactly which gavel the RTC is using, because if you lose in the RTC and want to appeal to the Court of Appeals, the rules are completely different depending on which jurisdiction the RTC just exercised. Before we proceed to our root level, let us hit the pause button. Close your eyes for a brief moment. Actively recall the visual anchors we just discussed. What does the lawyer planting the golden seed represent? Yes, original jurisdiction, instituting a case for the first time. What does the giant magnifying glass over the fully grown tree mean? Yes, appellate jurisdiction, reviewing the completed case. Can appellate and original jurisdiction mix as shown by the brick wall? No, they are absolutely exclusive. And finally, what do the two glowing gavels represent? Yes, it is the dual nature of the RTC. Open your eyes. Excellent recall. Let us lock those concepts in. Let us bring this down to root level with the landmark Supreme Court ruling in Garcia versus De Jesus. In this case, The Supreme Court cemented the doctrine of exclusivity. Litigants sometimes attempt to file an original action directly with a higher appellate body, arguing that since the higher court will eventually review the case anyway, it should just hear the case from the start to save time. The Supreme Court rejected this shortcut. The court ruled that original and appellate jurisdiction are completely exclusive of each other. One does not flow from the other. A higher court cannot presume or infer original jurisdiction just because it possesses appellate supremacy. If the statute does not expressly grant a court the power to hear a case in the first instance, the court must dismiss it, regardless of its rank. To wrap up our discussion today, here is a highly possible bar question testing the exclusivity of original and appellate jurisdiction. Let us read it. XYZ Corporation wishes to file an ordinary civil action against ABC Incorporated for 5 million pesos. Wanting to avoid delays, the council filed the original complaint directly before the Court of Appeals. The council argued that since the CA possesses appellate jurisdiction to eventually review RTC decisions in some of many cases, it inherently possesses the power to take original cognizance of the case to achieve a speedy disposition of justice. Is the argument of XYZ Corporation's counsel correct? I will leave this question with you as your assignment. Remember the impenetrable brick wall and the Garcia versus De Jesus doctrine that we had just discussed. Draft your best beer style answer and we will reveal the suggested answer after 3 days. Before we officially end today's session, remember Ecclesiastes chapter 7 verse 8. The end of a matter is better than its beginning. In remedial law, know where a case must begin and where it must end. In your bar journey, your beginning may be difficult, but the end, when you finally take your oath, will be glorious. Thank you for joining me on day 20. Keep up the momentum, and I will see you in our next session.